Hi students, I'm Una.
And I'm Scott.
I'm a UK OET teacher.
I'm also an OET teacher from the UK.
We've been teaching students to pass their exams for many years.
And now we're excited to help you pass your exams too.
This is the Swoosh English OET podcast.
Let's get started.
Are you struggling with your OET exam preparation?
Are you unsure how to reach your target score of a grade A or B? Let Swoosh English help you get there.
Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click the link in the description for your free OET complete guide to writing.
Everything you need to know to pass your OET writing step by step. Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click on the link in the description below.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Swoosh English podcast. My name is Una.
And my name is Scott.
And today we are looking at the OET exam and we're going to look at the writing section in particular. But today we're going to get a little bit even more specific and look at tenses. Why tenses are so important and how to use the different tenses within your OET writing task.
Now, of course, tenses are probably the core of any language, and it is probably something that maybe a lot of you have dreaded learning when you've been learning English for how many years you've been learning it for, especially learning the perfect tenses, dreading how to use the past perfect, for example. But this is something that is very important to your writing overall, so I think it's very important that we do go through this. After all, you are going to be indulging in a lot of information in your case notes and your writing, which do involve a lot of different time periods. Okay, what's been happening most recently in the patient's life and what has also been happening in the past as well.
Yeah, so medical history. Yeah, unchanging things. But this is something that we see a lot when we're marking writing, when we're marking letters. We do see a lot of mistakes when it comes to tenses. So it's very important that at the end of the day, just remember, this is an exam that is testing your linguistic abilities, your English skills. So it's something, if you feel like your foundational skills, such as your ability to use tenses, it's not up to scratch, then you need to make sure that you, of course, listen to this podcast and then go away and, really focus on your foundational grammar and make sure that you even do, grammar activities on tenses such as the present perfect. And then you can really put that into practice when you're doing your writing tasks and when you're practicing the letters.
As Una just said, this podcast by itself isn't going to be sufficient for you to really work on any of your deficiencies when it comes to actually using particular tenses. But what it is going to give you is an idea about how some tenses can be used practically in OET letter writing.
Yeah, just give you an overview.
Imagine 20 minutes. Oh my goodness, I have all my tenses answered. That's not going to happen. It's going to give you an overview about how they can be used specifically in OET, and then you can go away and do that work and improve in the areas that you might work on.
And we're going to look at 4 different tenses really today. So present tense, past simple, present perfect, and present continuous. And try and, make them specific to OET as well, and given the different situations in which you can use those tenses for what kind of information you can use, So let's get in just we always want to give a little breakdown of what exactly the writing task is and what the criteria is that you're being marked on. So, of course, the writing task is a letter. So it could be a referral letter, a discharge letter, even maybe an advice letter.
But most likely a referral letter.
Of course, a referral letter is the most common, and that's the one that you do see a lot of time in the OET exam, and you'll get lots of practice on this one. And of course, you have 45 minutes in total, 5 minutes at first to look at the case notes, and we have done another podcast on analysing the case notes, how you can use those, how you can expand the case notes in your letter, so make sure you listen to that one as well.
Basically, just watch all of our podcasts.
Yeah. Listen, we always say watch because, of course, we are here filming the podcast on video as well. But of course, many of you might just be listening to the podcast on your way to work.
It's always important to remember that.
Listening to our lovely voices.
Maybe yours.
Yes. So, as I said, 45 minutes, 5 minutes for the case note, to look at the case notes, and then 40 minutes to get stuck into the writing and planning, of course.
So why is using tenses important in OET writing? Well, I think it's now important to have a look through some of the scoring criteria for OET writing. Now, of course, I'm going to go through all the criteria, but I'm only going to really focus on the areas in which obviously your tenses will actually be useful in terms of your scoring. So, of course, there are 6 assessment criteria. Purpose, Content, conciseness and clarity, genre and style, organization and layout, and most importantly is language. And language is where we're going to look at in terms of your tenses. So this is OET scoring criteria for basically what you need to do in terms of getting full marks for language. It is whether the accuracy of the grammar, vocabulary, and spelling and punctuation communicates the necessary information to the reader. So of course, tenses come under your ability to use grammar. But most importantly, it's not about your ability to use all of these tenses in a very show-off sort of way. Look at my grammar. It's fantastic. I have all the grammar. I can use all the grammar entirely. It's important that you do not try to show off, but you use them appropriately. Accurately. So those key words, the accuracy of the grammar, not the range of the grammar. Accuracy. So that's where you'll be scored in terms of your tenses. So it's important that you do know how to use your tenses accurately to score as highly as you can in the language sub-criteria.
And at the end of the day, like aside from just thinking about the criteria, of course, to get past to pass your letter in the OET exam, also put yourself in the position of, you know, just when you go out into the real world and you start to write these kind of letters, and you need to make sure that your tenses are all accurately used. You put the different information, you know, in terms of when it happened in the past or the present, or if it's relevant to now, and make sure that the reader of your letter actually understands the time frame that you've presented. If it's incorrect and your grammar is inaccurate, well, it's going to be very confusing for the reader, and they're not going to be put in a confident or comfortable position going forward to treat the patient that you are perhaps referring, you know? So just to emphasize how important using the correct grammar for each different point really is so important for the person reading the letter going forward.
Okay, fantastic. So let's actually now start looking at our tenses. The first tense we want to look at is the present simple, e.g. the verbs do, make, come, but verbs that are used in the present simple tense. Obviously one of the first tenses you have learned, the first tense you will have learned actually in English.
Yeah.
So even though you may think, okay, this is quite beginner level stuff, I'm pretty used to that, it's always important to reuse it and rehash it and use it once again in the OET specific context. So why do we use the present simple? Well, we use that to report unchanging facts.
Yes.
So examples of unchanging facts that you might have in the case notes would be, for example, the patient's name, the patient's job, the patient's occupation, their age.
Yeah. So an example, like the patient is 49 years old, she is divorced and has 2 dependent children. So if that information is relevant, of course, for your letter and you want to include, you know, how many children they have, whatever, then you're going to use present simple for this because it's unchanging information. It is a fact. After all. It's a fact. It's not going to change anytime soon.
So the important thing to look at is facts. It's also applicable in addition to things that might be more obvious to things that are unlikely to change. For example, if the patient might have a chronic condition, which they're likely to have for the rest of their life. For example, the patient is allergic to penicillin.
Or just an allergy.
An allergy, for example.
An allergy. The patient is allergic to penicillin, as you said. It's a good example because she got this allergy. She's perhaps had it all her life, and you know it's not likely to change anytime soon. So you could use the present tense for that. So just think of it, you know, in your as you said, your beginner learning of English. You know, you used it for things that are routine, things that happen all the time.
Things that actually happen at the same time every day. Yeah. For example, I go to bed at 10, I wake up and eat breakfast at 7.
Yeah, these are unchanging.
Unchanging facts. So likes of that we would use the present simple for.
Are you struggling with your OET exam preparation?
Are you unsure how to reach your target score of a grade A or B? Let Swoosh English help you get there.
Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click the link in the description for your free OET complete guide to writing.
Everything you need to know to pass your OET writing step by step. Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click on the link in the description below.
Definitely. Okay, so that's a really good example of how you can use the present simple in your OET letter. Next, let's look at the past simple. So, of course, changing those verbs that you said into did, make, made, and come.
Did becomes did, make becomes made, and come becomes came, etc., etc.
Yes. Okay. So, of course, this is going to be used a lot to provide the background information. Okay. So, perhaps some time when the patient visited you before in the past, and it's going to be set in the context of a fixed time period. Okay. So, when we use the past simple, a lot of the time we are using, like, for example, 2 weeks ago, last month,
the previous
yesterday.
year, yesterday.
Yes, exactly. So an example would be the patient first presented 2 months ago with a bowel complaint. At this time, she displayed symptoms consistent with IBS.
So that was precisely in the past. That event in which the person turned up was 2 months ago. The information can still be relevant now, but it occurred in a fixed period of time.
And you were stating
in the past.
that fixed
And you
time
stated
period.
that time period 2 months ago, yesterday. So that's important why we use the past simple.
It doesn't
in that
necessarily
context.
mean it's irrelevant now, but as you said, it's set in the context of a fixed time period. So therefore, you will use your past simple. And of course, perhaps this appointment and the symptoms that they showed 2 weeks ago may be developed upon later in the letter. That's fine, but you're using past simple within the context, I'll say it again, the fixed time period.
And this is highly relevant for sections of which we're actually given the medical history as well. So obviously we want to relate to the medical history of the patient, and therefore we need to state things that happened at a fixed time in the past. That's why we need to use past simple in those given situations.
Definitely. Okay, so what about present perfect then?
So present perfect is used to state about an action or time which may have occurred in the past. In fact, it did occur in the past, but it's still incredibly relevant to be used now at this precise time.
Yeah.
So it's still relevant to what's
So you want to
going on.
connect a past event to the present and why it's still relevant now. So for example, I've prescribed the patient propranolol in order to help control his anxiety. Or the patient has responded well to treatment. So the treatment happened in the past, but we're showing that they've responded well and they're still responding now well. So it's showing relevant to now. And of course, there's also no set time period.
No.
We haven't stated a set time period or a fixed time period in the past within our present perfect sentence.
So if you think back to your linguistic fundamentals when learning the difference between the past simple and the past and the present perfect, for example, you know that you wouldn't use those fixed time periods such as 2 days ago, yesterday, last month, etc. Your teacher would have crossed them out. So you wouldn't use those. Instead, you may have indicators that come along with this language, the words being for and since, which are used to indicate a perfect tense. For example, we might have the patient has received massage therapy for the last 5 months, indicating that the event began 5 months ago and is still occurring now. And therefore, it's also still relevant in the present time period as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So just remember, although you're not using a fixed time period like 2 weeks ago, yesterday, last week, you can still use, your durations of time for, and then since, of course, for.
So since last year, 4 or 5 months, for
Yes,
example. So of course,
exactly.
we can go into more detail about for and since, but this is not this podcast about. If it's any aspect of the grammar that you need to practice, then I recommend you go ahead and do that yourself.
Yes, definitely. If you feel like you need more practice with the present perfect and showing that the relevance of something that started in the past to now, then make sure you get some practice with that, whether it be with your teacher or, going back and looking for grammar activities even. Looking up, present perfect grammar activities. Of course, you can find lots on the internet or whether you have a textbook and get practicing those and make sure you're able to structure those sentences correctly
And every
as
student
well.
could go away and actually work on some aspect of their grammar, and even some, as I said, some simple tenses. They need to obviously go back and rehash the rules of them so that we can use them all. That's a difficult part of OET, is using all these tenses interchangeably as well. Be fluid with using them.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so what about the present continuous then?
So the
We're gonna talk
present
about that.
present continuous is designed to show an action which is specifically relevant to the present and doesn't actually have any relation to the past. So we might actually use that to talk about something which has occurred extremely recently. For
Definitely,
example,
yeah.
we could say the patient's condition is deteriorating, or the patient is refusing to take her medication. So that means that something has happened quite recently to indicate something that is highly relevant now.
Yeah, and it indicates its difference to the past, so it wasn't occurring before, but now it is occurring and it's very relevant to now. And it's just emphasizing that, showing it occurred extremely recently.
Yeah.
So those are really good example sentences that you gave there about showing, the patient's condition is deteriorating. at the minute.
We take away that dissociation with the past,
Yes,
for example.
exactly.
If the patient condition was not deteriorating then, but it is now, we state that by saying it is deteriorating, and that's something the medical practitioner needs to take note of, for example.
Definitely. Okay, so it's dissociation from the past is what makes present continuous, relevant and unique. Okay, so shall we just recap then? That's just a brief overview of present simple, past simple, present perfect, and present continuous. So in relation to your OET exam, present simple for something which is unchanging or unlikely to change in the future. Those unchanging facts. Such as the patient's profile.
The patient's profile, such as their name, or maybe a chronic condition that they might have as well. So
yes.
You can refer to that there. So the past simple is used to refer to something which has occurred specifically in the past, and it has one of those time indicators involved. For example, last month, 2 days ago, yesterday, for example. So something that occurred in the past. It may be relevant now, but the action was a fixed time in the past.
Yes, and again, background information is often where we use that. And then we have our present perfect for information which links the past to the present, okay? So a lot of the time that's going to be showing things that you want to show that, started in the past, but they're continuing up to now and they're still relevant. And there's lots of different times you can also use with for and since as well. So then our present continuous.
Which refers to an action which is now relevant primarily to the present in time, and we're always trying to indicate that to the medical professional that something may need action. So it doesn't actually have anything in the time to link it to. For example, they could be developments in the patient's situation which are distinct or different from the past, needing immediate attention.
That's a good point that you made. That you're letting the reader know this information because they need to react or do something about it. It's happening now and it's relevant now. So how can students then improve their grammar overall?
Well, ultimately, the first thing you should do, apart from obviously doing your self-study, is obviously having an OET teacher. Why do you need an OET teacher? Well, it's essential. You want to ensure that you are writing accurately in your grammatical style in the OET letter. But how would you know if you are doing it accurately if you're not receiving feedback from a native English expert? So find a teacher, aka it could be someone that you might know, or it could be with us at Swoosh English. It is important for you to get feedback on your grammar. For example, you may be using the past simple incorrectly. You may be using for or since with it, or you may be using 2 days ago with the present perfect, for example. Or maybe your grammatical, maybe you're obviously using the right grammatical style, but you're using the tense out of context as well. You need to get feedback from experts on this so that you can correct your mistakes and also write a better letter overall.
Exactly. And if you're getting feedback on your letter, that is great. Then you can really self-reflect on those mistakes and make sure that you are actually, noting them down. It's a really good idea to perhaps create a table where you write down the different grammatical things such as articles, tenses, pronouns, whatever it is. And then you can write in whether you made that mistake on that or what your mistake was on any given day. Then you can correct the mistake, okay? Make sure that you actually correct them and ask yourself why you made that mistake or try to understand why it was corrected and what you should do going forward.
Key word there being why is important. So you need to get to the fundamentals of why you're making that mistake, because when you understand why it's being made, then hopefully you won't do it again. There's no point in obviously receiving corrections thinking, okay, I'll change that, but not actually being ensuring if your correction was sufficient to address the problem.
Exactly, yeah. So, and like we said, self-reflection, so important, because we've said numerous times, but a lot of OET students tend to think, I just want to write letter after letter, get lots of practice at this. But you need to make sure that you actually are going away and looking at the feedback that you received, actually building upon it and making sure that you avoid making those mistakes again.
Good points.
Okay, so feedback, really important for this. Of course, getting foundational practice as well. So if you feel like you're not confident with any particular tense, and whether it be present perfect or present continuous, go away and practice it even outside the context of OET.
Yeah, go back to the basics, as we say. It's important.
Yeah, go back to basics. I like that. Okay, so is that us for today? Would you have any final tips you would like to give?
We've pretty much covered it. You know what you have to do now. Obviously, take the examples that we've used in this podcast, but go away and do your own work to ensure your own grammatical knowledge. And most importantly, the accuracy of your grammar is up to scratch for OET. You can do it. Grammar isn't that bad. It's possible. So some words of motivation there for you guys.
That's always important, isn't it? To motivate our students. Keep going, guys. Stay strong, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for watching. See you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.